Hi everyone, welcome to this video. This is the last video that I'll make for this class. I hope that the videos that I've made up to now have been helpful to you, and I intend to make this one quite useful. Nobody's taken the final yet, which is good because I haven't made it yet, and so I want to then make sure that that gets put up today. So you should be seeing the final about the same time that you see the video, although the video might be a little bit prior to the final. Okay. You'll have until March the 3rd to take it, and before you take it, I want to give you some general feedback on the midterm. This is feedback to everybody, but I'm going to break it into about 4 different sections, 4 different pieces of feedback that should help you, whoever you are. So, number 1, I was a little bit surprised that a lot of you wrote very little, a paragraph or 2. And so I'll split those into 2 groups. By far, the most of you that wrote just a very small amount got quite low grades, sort of D, E sort of range. Very often, the majority of you that wrote very short ones, not only was it very short, right, and this is supposed to be an essay that an argument in response to the question. I was expecting a much longer essay from many of you, certainly not all. A lot of times there was no content in there, right? There was some sort of general statements about a lot of you chose the Mearsheimer question. A lot of you chose that one. So a lot of there was maybe a paragraph, and it was sort of in generalities. China's becoming more powerful, more economically powerful. The United States is already very powerful, so maybe they'll clash. That's a theory, right? And that's a real theory that is fair to talk about. Except the question asked about Mearsheimer, right? Well, why does Mearsheimer think? And Mearsheimer has some very specific reasons why he thinks that war is quite likely. And so there's 2 main things I suppose that I was looking for in that Mearsheimer question. One of them was the regional hegemony, right? To explain what that regional hegemony means. Explain, as some of you did. Not the ones that wrote very short pieces. I don't think any of you did. But what I was looking for and sort of ideas to make that longer, he had some very specific ideas. 1, regional hegemony. What is regional hegemony? Talk about the United States as regional hegemony. Talk about why the United States should care about who the regional hegemon is in Asia, right? Talk about why show that the United States has cared in the past about other regional hegemons, right? Those of you that wrote very short pieces, very oftentimes there was very little content in there, and there certainly wasn't that about the regional hegemony. The other thing for Mearsheimer that would have been very useful was just that he has those realist principles in there that would have been very appropriate for this, to sort of explain the regional hegemony and the power struggle and that sort of thing. Even to explain what many of you were sort of trying to get at about sort of increases in power. If you'd have had a little bit more or anything in there about Mearsheimer's assumptions about world politics and how it works, that would have increased your score fairly significantly. Now, there are some people who wrote quite short pieces still that I thought, oh, this is shorter than I was expecting, and this is a sort of a second group of people now who had some detail in there, right? You really were able to get quite a lot about Mearsheimer's regional hegemonies in there, as well as a little bit sometimes, not as often, but I did see some of this, and the points were higher because of it. Some of the sort of realist assumptions that he's making. That's great, and some of you got decent scores. When you're only writing 1 paragraph, you can do an overview, but to get into detail and to explain it in full, quite there. If you've only got like a paragraph in there. So that's the first 2 groups of you that I think that I was thinking about as I was grading those. And there was a smaller group, so there's like sort of the short answer group, then there's the long answer group. The short answer group is broken into 2. Which was the majority was short answers with very little content in there. And then there was another sort of smaller group over subsection of that, which were quite short, surprisingly short, but but covered some, give me an overview of mearsheimer, which was a little bit better. And there's a long answer group. Many of the long answer groups were in the sort of had the opposite, right? The long answer groups, many of them were good. They had detail in them. There was, because I suppose it's a longer piece, right? In this group, there was quite a gradation, right? In between, I definitely read long pieces that had little to no content in them, right? A lot of generality, a lot of sort of, with very little substance in them. I think one of the long ones that I saw a lot was the, what's realism, liberalism, and constructivism taught you about world politics. That in some way was quite a good gift to you, right? Because it allowed you to say, basically, if you'd learned anything at all, if you'd taken anything from the book at all, then that was a place where you could really talk about that. So I did see quite a lot of long essays that covered that. But again, I did see a gradation from the, hey, I've written a ton of stuff, but it's just stuff, right? And it doesn't really bring anything in from the readings at all. Even if you mention a few names, that's something, right? But if it's almost like you haven't done any of the readings, then that's very difficult to give you any points at all. I tried, and sometimes it was again in the D and E range. But I'll be certainly looking for much better in the final. And then of course it went from that to only a very few, only a very small number, maybe 5 out of the 80 or so students in the class, maybe about 5 that got very high marks. Very high marks, I'm talking about 15s and 16s. So full marks, there was a couple. But very few, relatively few. So that should give you an idea a little bit about where you fall. Again, with this other group, this long essay group, yes, there was more of a gradation. Like the small essay group was either you had details or you didn't have details, and even those of you who had the details, it wasn't a full. And then the big one was more sort of a fine line between some ones that were very full of good details. And to be honest with you, on this midterm, and be careful of this on the final, because I'm saying it now, I'm definitely watching for it. Even some of the very good ones, I sort of, because there was a lot of not great ones, I sort of give a little bit of leeway. I still want to see you. Let me be careful how I say this next part, all right? Because I don't want to mislead you. So listen to the nuance in what I'm saying. So the criticism that I have is that even some of the ones with a lot of details, it just kind of had a lot of details in it, and sometimes I wasn't sure exactly how they fit into your argument. But what I'll say to you is, if you have to choose, I don't want you to choose. I want you to use details that will advance your argument. That's the gold standard. If you do have to choose between putting in details, the more detail you put in, definitely the more of a chance you've got. So I don't want you just throwing random details in there, but honestly, like if it's a choice between putting random details in there and putting no details in there, definitely put the random details in there, even if it doesn't seem to help your argument. You won't get the full points in the final, but you'll get more probably than the average from the midterm. The average from the midterm, by the way, was about 25 points out of the 32. I don't know if you can see that actually on Canvas. You may be able to see it. I don't know if I have to set that up or if that's the default. You may be able to see the average better than I can tell you, but I think it was about 81%. It dropped down because there was a few that I'd give zeros to that didn't have any, that not only did you not do any, they didn't do the exam, right? So there was a few zeros. So that dropped the average down a little bit. So the average of people who did the exam completed was about 81%. So that should give you as well a gauge of where you're at with that compared to the rest of the class. I'd like to see an improvement, a general improvement towards the final. I'd like to see that, but obviously that's down to you. Some tips based on what I'm seeing. Certainly, it's very easy for those who are writing next to nothing. Just write more, right? A lot of times it tells me how long you spent on the exam in the top. I was seeing like 20 minutes. It's an hour and a half exam. It should take you an hour and a half. It should take the full amount of time. You should be writing. So when you're doing your revisions, when you're doing your revisions in English, in England means studying, I guess, like revision for exam, study for exam. When you're doing that, I recommend for the final, right? I mean, pick two sections that we've studied since the midterm, and just know the reading. Just know what it's saying. Know the author, but know the principles in there, right? We talked about international law. Know that, and what I'm about to say, I haven't made the final yet, and so I'm not telling you what's on the final because there's nothing on the final. But this is only very much a very general example, right, that I'm giving you. So, know, for example, if you say, I'm going to know this international law section very well. Okay, know the differences, know what positive law is, be able to explain positive law, be able to explain natural law, be able to explain the difference between, be able to explain a little bit how they developed, right, from natural law to positivism. Right, that's just one example. There's tons of other things, and that might not come up on the exam, but you see what I'm saying. Look inside, look at the important points, check out my videos as well. That should help you with the important points. I'm about to go on in a second. Look at the most popular questions throughout the last half of the class. See if you can answer those questions. See if you can give some background on those questions. See if you can see where those students are getting the questions from. That will make you, if you did that for all of the questions, I think that's would be fairly safe to say that if you could answer all those questions very well, so even just looking at the videos might help, because I think I answered them quite well. But you might have to go beyond my answers, right? You're in an exam with an essay, so you might have to be able to bring in even more from the text than I do. But certainly my level would be a good, my level on these videos, right, would be a good start, a very good start. If so, there's some advice for the final. I hope that helps. I'm going to end this video now, and I'm going to post it as advice for the final, sort of midterm feedback advice for the final, and then I'm going to make a different video where I discuss the questions from this week.